Emma Carter had long ago learned that people could be cruel without ever raising their voices. Sometimes cruelty came disguised as laughter. Sometimes it hid behind polite smiles. And sometimes it arrived in the form of silence, the kind that made a person feel invisible. For most of her life, Emma had experienced all three. At 32 years old, she lived in a small apartment on the east side of Manhattan. She worked as an accountant for a nonprofit organization, spent weekends caring for her elderly grandmother, and rarely did anything exciting. She wasn't famous. She wasn't rich. She wasn't the kind of woman who turned heads when she entered a room. And, according to society's standards, that made her easy to ignore. But Emma possessed something many people lacked: kindness. The kind of kindness that expected nothing in return. The kind of kindness that survived despite years of disappointment. Unfortunately, the world rarely rewarded people like her. Especially not New York. On the night everything changed, rain fell lightly across the city streets. Yellow taxi lights reflected against wet pavement while luxury cars lined up outside the Grand Wellington Hotel. The building itself looked like a palace. Crystal chandeliers glowed through enormous windows. Security guards stood near the entrance. Photographers snapped pictures of wealthy guests arriving for one of the city's most prestigious charity galas. Inside, the richest and most influential people in New York gathered beneath golden lights. Politicians, business owners, celebrities, models, socialites. And among them was Emma Carter. The invitation had come through her workplace. The charity organization where she worked had received recognition for helping underprivileged families. Her boss insisted she attend. "You work harder than anyone else here," her boss had said. "You deserve to be there." Emma almost refused. Events like these usually ended the same way. She felt out of place. People judged her. And she spent the evening wishing she had stayed home. But this time she agreed. Maybe because her grandmother encouraged her. Maybe because a small part of her wanted to believe things could be different. So she bought an elegant emerald green evening dress, spent extra time on her hair, applied makeup more carefully than usual. And for the first time in years, she looked in the mirror and smiled. "You look beautiful," her grandmother told her before she left. Emma laughed softly. "You're biased." "No," her grandmother replied. "The world simply doesn't know how beautiful you are yet." Those words stayed with her during the drive. But the confidence disappeared the moment she entered the ballroom. The room was breathtaking. Massive crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Live musicians played soft classical music. Waiters carried silver trays filled with expensive champagne. Everywhere she looked, people seemed flawless. Designer gowns, perfect smiles, perfect bodies, perfect lives. Or, at least, that's what they wanted everyone to believe. Emma immediately noticed the stares. Women looked her up and down. Men glanced at her before quickly looking elsewhere. Several guests whispered behind their hands. She tried to ignore it. She really did. But years of experience had taught her exactly what those looks meant. The familiar feeling returned. The feeling of not belonging. Near one of the cocktail tables, two women wearing diamond necklaces exchanged glances. One leaned toward the other. Emma couldn't hear every word, but she heard enough. "Who invited her?" The second woman laughed. "Maybe she's someone's assistant." Both women smirked. Emma looked away, pretending she hadn't heard, pretending it didn't hurt, because admitting it hurt would make it real. She moved toward the balcony area where fewer people stood. The fresh air helped. For several minutes, she simply watched the city skyline, the lights, the traffic, the endless movement of New York below. Then she felt it. A strange sensation, like someone was watching her. Emma turned and saw him. Vittorio Romano. Even people who knew nothing about organized crime knew his name. Stories about him circulated constantly. Some called him a businessman. Others called him a criminal mastermind. Most people simply called him dangerous. At 38 years old, Vittorio possessed a reputation that inspired both fear and fascination. He was tall, broad-shouldered, impossibly handsome, dressed entirely in black. The expensive suit fit him perfectly. His expression remained unreadable, cold, controlled, powerful. Around him stood several men who clearly served as security. No one approached Vittorio casually. Even billionaires seemed careful when speaking to him. Yet at that moment, his eyes were fixed directly on Emma. She immediately looked away. Her heart beat faster, not because she was attracted to him, but because powerful men never looked at her. Certainly not men like Vittorio Romano. After a few seconds, she convinced herself she imagined it. Why would someone like him notice someone like her? It made no sense. So she focused on the city again, completely unaware that Vittorio had indeed been watching her. And not just tonight, for months. Because 6 months earlier, Emma Carter had unknowingly changed his life. It happened on a rainy afternoon. A teenage boy had collapsed near a subway station after being struck by a vehicle. Hundreds of people walked past. Most ignored him. Some recorded videos on their phones. Others simply continued with their day. But Emma stopped. Without hesitation. She called an ambulance, stayed with the injured teenager, held his hand, comforted him, and refused to leave until medical help arrived. That teenager happened to be Matteo Romano, Vittorio's 17-year-old nephew, the only family member he truly loved. Doctors later admitted Matteo might not have survived if Emma hadn't acted so quickly. When Vittorio learned who had saved his nephew, he investigated. At first it was simple curiosity. Then something unexpected happened. The more he learned about Emma, the more interested he became. He discovered she volunteered at shelters, donated money despite having very little herself, helped elderly neighbors without seeking recognition, and spent nearly every free moment caring for her grandmother. She expected nothing in return. In Vittorio's world, people always wanted something. Money, power, protection, favors. Emma wanted none of those things. That made her different. And Vittorio respected different. For months, he quietly observed from a distance, never approaching, never interfering, simply watching, learning, trying to understand why someone could remain kind in a world that constantly punished kindness. Tonight was the first time he had seen her in person, and seeing her surrounded by people who judged her only strengthened his opinion. Emma possessed more dignity than everyone else in that ballroom combined. Unfortunately, not everyone agreed. Across the room stood Richard Hayes, a wealthy real estate developer known for arrogance and cruelty. Richard had inherited most of his fortune, but spoke as if he built the world himself. He enjoyed humiliating people, especially those he considered beneath him. After several glasses of expensive whiskey, his behavior became even worse. His eyes landed on Emma. A cruel smile appeared. Richard nudged one of his friends. "Watch this." His friends laughed immediately. The group began walking toward Emma. Vittorio noticed. His expression darkened. One of his bodyguards stepped forward. "Boss." Vittorio slowly raised a hand, stopping him. "For now." Richard approached Emma with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. "Good evening," he said loudly. Emma forced a polite smile. "Good evening." Richard looked her up and down. The smile on his face grew wider. "You seem lost." Several nearby guests laughed. Emma felt her stomach tighten. "I'm fine." Richard shook his head dramatically. "No, seriously. This is a private gala." More laughter. Emma remained silent. She knew where this was going. Richard leaned closer. "Who are you here with?" "My company received an invitation." "Oh." He pretended surprise. "That's unfortunate." The surrounding crowd chuckled. Emma's cheeks burned. Still she remained calm. Years of being judged had taught her patience. But Richard wasn't finished. Not even close. He raised his champagne glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced loudly. Conversations around them stopped. People turned to watch. Richard pointed directly at Emma. "Let's play a game." Emma's heart sank. Several guests grinned. They already knew what kind of game this would be. Richard smirked. If every man in this room had to choose a dance partner? He paused dramatically. How many would choose her? Laughter exploded through the ballroom. Emma froze. The humiliation hit harder than anything she had experienced in years. People actually laughed. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to hurt. enough to remind her exactly how little some people valued kindness. Tears threatened to appear. She fought them back, refusing to cry in front of these people. Richard looked pleased with himself. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. Nobody here would ever choose her. Silence followed. A heavy silence. Because another voice suddenly entered the conversation. A deep voice.
Cold. Calm.
Dangerous. You're wrong. The entire room froze. Richard's smile vanished. Everyone turned and saw Vittorio Romano slowly rising from his chair. The atmosphere changed instantly. Fear spread across the ballroom. Even Richard looked nervous. Vittorio adjusted his jacket. His eyes never left Emma. Then he spoke 6 words that would change all their lives forever. She'll do. He took a step forward. I'll take her. The room fell completely silent. And Emma Carter had absolutely no idea that her life was about to change forever. The silence inside the Grand Wellington Hotel felt almost unnatural. Moments earlier, the ballroom had been filled with laughter. Now nobody dared speak. Nobody dared move. Because Vittorio Romano had just done something nobody expected. The most feared man in New York had publicly sided with the woman everyone else had mocked. Emma stood frozen. Her heart hammered against her chest. Surely she had misunderstood. Surely Vittorio wasn't talking about her. But then he started walking. Straight toward her. Each step echoed across the marble floor. The crowd instinctively moved aside.
No one wanted to stand in his path.
Not businessmen. Not politicians. Not celebrities. Even Richard Hayes took several nervous steps backward. For the first time all evening, the arrogant millionaire looked genuinely afraid. Vittorio stopped directly in front of Emma. The difference in height made him seem even more imposing. His expression remained calm, controlled. Yet there was something dangerous behind his eyes. Something that made powerful men lose sleep. Emma swallowed hard. Mr. Romano. It was all she could manage. To her surprise, his voice softened slightly.
Emma.
She blinked. How did he know her name? The question appeared on her face. Vittorio noticed immediately. A faint smile touched his lips. The first smile anyone in the room had ever seen from him. I know who you are. The statement confused her even more. Around them, hundreds of guests watched in disbelief. People whispered. Some looked jealous. Others looked terrified. Nobody understood what was happening. Least of all Emma. Richard finally found enough courage to speak. Mr. Romano. Vittorio slowly turned his head. The coldness in his eyes returned instantly. Richard visibly flinched. I think there has been some misunderstanding.
No.
Vittorio's voice was calm. There hasn't. Richard forced a laugh. I was only joking.
No.
Another step forward. You were humiliating her. Richard's face turned pale. Everyone knew Vittorio hated cowardice. And humiliating someone weaker than yourself was the definition of cowardice. The billionaire tried again. I didn't mean anything by it. Vittorio stared at him for several seconds. The silence became unbearable. Then he asked a simple question. Tell me, Richard. Why yes? If someone treated your daughter the way you treated Miss Carter tonight. He paused. Would you still call it a joke? Richard couldn't answer. Because the answer was obvious. Vittorio nodded slowly. Exactly. The room remained silent. Nobody came to Richard's defense. Nobody wanted to. Because everyone knew Vittorio was right. The wealthy businessman had crossed a line. And now he was paying for it. Emma watched everything unfold in disbelief. No one had ever defended her before. Not like this. Most people ignored cruelty. Some participated in it. But nobody stood up against it. Until now. Vittorio turned back toward her. His expression softened again. Are you all right? Emma nodded. Though honestly, she wasn't sure. The entire situation felt unreal. I'm okay. Good. Then something unexpected happened. Vittorio extended his hand. The room practically stopped breathing. Would you dance with me? Gasps echoed across the ballroom. Emma's eyes widened.
Dance?
With him? Surely this was impossible. Across the room, women who had spent the evening competing for Vittorio's attention looked absolutely stunned. Many of them were younger, more glamorous, more socially connected. Yet Vittorio had ignored every one of them and was now asking Emma Carter to dance. She looked around nervously. Everyone was watching. Mr. Romano. Vittorio.
What?
My name is Vittorio. Emma stared. He was asking her to call him by his first name. The most feared mafia boss in New York. The same man senators addressed carefully. The same man billionaires treated with respect. Wanted her to call him Vittorio. The realization made her even more nervous. I don't think that's a good idea. A small smile appeared. Why not? Because everyone is staring. His answer came immediately. Let them stare. Something about the way he said it made her laugh softly. For the first time all evening, Vittorio noticed. And for a brief moment, he found himself unable to look away. She had a beautiful smile. Not because it was perfect, but because it was genuine.
Rare. Real.
In his world, genuine things were difficult to find. After a few seconds, Emma slowly placed her hand in his. The reaction from the crowd was immediate.
Shock.
Disbelief. Jealousy. Confusion. Vittorio ignored all of it, leading her toward the center of the ballroom. The orchestra, sensing the moment, began playing a slow melody. Hundreds of eyes followed them. Emma felt like she was dreaming. Vittorio placed one hand gently at her waist, far more respectfully than she expected. She rested her hand on his shoulder, and together they began moving across the dance floor. The ballroom watched in stunned silence. Nobody had ever seen Vittorio dance with anyone before, especially not in public. Meanwhile, Richard Hayes stood near the bar, humiliated. His face burned with embarrassment. But instead of learning his lesson, his anger grew, because men like Richard rarely accepted responsibility. Instead, they blamed others. And now he blamed Emma. If she hadn't shown up, none of this would have happened. The bitterness inside him became something darker, something dangerous. As the dance continued, Vittorio noticed Emma relaxing. Gradually, her nervousness faded. For the first time that evening, she looked comfortable.
Happy.
The sight pleased him more than he expected. You seem surprised, he said quietly. Emma laughed. That's because I am.
About what?
Everything. The honesty amused him. You don't usually dance with mafia bosses? She smiled. I've never danced with any mafia boss.
Good.
She raised an eyebrow.
Good.
I dislike competition. The comment made her laugh again. A genuine laugh. And once more Vittorio found himself staring. The music continued. The crowd continued watching. But neither of them seemed to notice anymore. For several minutes, they simply danced. Two people from completely different worlds. One feared by everyone. One ignored by everyone. Yet somehow they fit together surprisingly well. Eventually, the music ended. Applause filled the ballroom. Emma immediately became nervous again. Vittorio sensed it. Without thinking, he gently squeezed her hand. A silent reassurance. Then his phone vibrated. One glance at the screen changed everything. His expression darkened. Instantly, Emma noticed. What happened? Vittorio didn't answer immediately. His eyes scanned the message. Danger. The message contained only 3 words. We found him. The blood drained from Vittorio's face. Because for 5 years he had searched for one man. The man responsible for murdering his younger brother. And, according to this message, that man had finally been located. Vittorio's war was about to begin. Unfortunately, he wasn't the only one making plans tonight. Across the ballroom, Richard Hayes was speaking with someone on the phone. His voice was low, angry, vengeful. His humiliation had become obsession. And he had just made a decision that would put Emma Carter directly in danger. A decision he would soon regret. Because hurting Emma meant making an enemy of Vittorio Romano. And nobody survived that mistake. The ride home should have been peaceful. Instead, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Vittorio Romano. Every moment from the gala replayed inside her head. The way he defended her. The way he looked at her. The way the entire ballroom went silent when he spoke. None of it felt real. Men like Vittorio existed in magazines, newspapers, and whispered rumors. Not in her life. Certainly not standing beside her on a dance floor. As her taxi moved through the streets of Manhattan, she stared out the window. The city lights blurred together. Yet for the first time in years, she felt something strange. Hope. A dangerous thing. Hope had disappointed her before. So she tried convincing herself tonight meant nothing. A simple act of kindness. Nothing more. She had no idea that at the exact same moment, Vittorio Romano was preparing for war. Inside Romano Tower, the atmosphere had changed completely. The elegant businessman from the gala no longer existed. Now only the Mafia boss remained. The top-floor conference room overlooked the city skyline. 20 armed men stood inside. No one spoke. No one moved. Because Vittorio was angry. And angry Vittorio was the most dangerous version of Vittorio. Marco, his longtime bodyguard, entered carrying a folder. We confirmed it. Vittorio slowly looked up. You're sure? Marco nodded. 100%. The room became silent. 5 years. 5 years of searching. 5 years of dead ends. 5 years of waiting. And now they finally found the man responsible for his brother's murder. Anthony Russo, a former member of the Romano organization. The traitor who sold information to enemies. The man whose betrayal caused a massacre. The man who disappeared before Vittorio could find him. Until now. Marco placed several photographs on the table. There he is. Vittorio stared. An older man. Gray hair. Living under a fake identity. Hiding in Chicago. Trying to escape his past. Unfortunately for Anthony Russo, the past had finally found him. Vittorio's eyes became cold. Ice cold. When do we leave? Private jet is ready. Good. Marco hesitated. That immediately caught Vittorio's attention. What? There is another problem. The bodyguard handed him a second folder. Vittorio opened it. His expression darkened instantly. Richard Hayes. Several surveillance photos. Phone records. Financial transactions. Suspicious meetings. Vittorio's jaw tightened. What is this? Marco answered carefully. Our people overheard a conversation after the gala. The room grew tense. What conversation? Richard Hayes is planning something. Vittorio's voice became deadly quiet. Against who? Marco didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to, because Vittorio already knew.
Emma.
Marco nodded. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Everyone present understood exactly what this meant. Richard Hayes had made a fatal mistake. Not because he targeted a powerful person. Not because Emma had bodyguards. Not because she had influence.
No.
The mistake was much simpler. Richard Hayes had chosen the wrong victim. The next morning, Emma woke early. Sunlight entered through the apartment window. For a brief moment, she thought everything from the gala had been a dream. Then she noticed something. A small black gift box sitting outside her apartment door. Confused, she picked it up. There was no sender name. Only a note. Emma carefully opened it. Inside was a beautiful silver bracelet. Elegant. Expensive. Far beyond anything she could afford. Her eyes widened. Then she saw another note. Simple. Short. Written in neat handwriting. For the woman who deserved better than what happened last night.
V.
Emma sat down slowly. Her heart started racing. Vittorio. The bracelet came from Vittorio. She stared at it for nearly a minute. Part of her wanted to return it. Another part wanted to keep it forever. Before she could decide, her phone rang. Her grandmother. Good morning, sweetheart. Emma smiled. Morning. I saw something interesting. Emma froze.
What?
Television. Oh no. Her grandmother laughed. Oh yes. Emma covered her face. News stations across New York were already discussing the gala. Photos of Vittorio dancing with her had gone viral overnight. Everyone wanted answers. Nobody had them. Especially Emma. Across the city, Richard Hayes watched the same news coverage. His face twisted with rage. Every channel showed Emma. Every article discussed Emma. Every headline talked about Emma. The woman he humiliated was now receiving sympathy from the entire city. Meanwhile, he looked like a bully. His reputation was suffering. Investors were asking questions. Business partners were distancing themselves. And Richard blamed only one person, Emma Carter. Hatred consumed him. His assistant entered nervously. Sir?
What?
We found her. Richard slowly smiled. A dark smile. Good. The assistant handed over information. Home address. Workplace. Daily routine. Everything. Richard looked satisfied. Very satisfied. Because rich men often believed money could solve any problem. And Richard had a lot of money. Enough to hire dangerous people. Enough to make someone's life miserable. Enough to destroy someone. At least that's what he believed. 3 days later, Emma finished work late. Rain covered the city again. Most employees had already left. She walked toward the parking garage carrying several files. The area felt unusually quiet. Too quiet. Her footsteps echoed. A strange feeling settled in her stomach. Then she heard another sound. Footsteps. Behind her, Emma turned. Nothing. The garage appeared empty. She exhaled slowly. Maybe she was imagining things. Then she heard it again. Closer. This time she stopped walking. Fear crawled into her chest. Hello? No answer. Silence. Emma reached for her phone. Suddenly, a large hand grabbed her arm. She screamed. The files fell to the ground. 3 men emerged from the shadows. Their faces were partially covered. Their intentions obvious. Emma tried pulling away. The grip tightened. One man smiled. Come with us. Panic exploded inside her. She struggled harder. Let me go. The man laughed.
No.
Another grabbed her other arm. Emma's heart pounded wildly. Nobody was around. Nobody could hear her. For the first time in years, she was truly terrified. Then a voice echoed through the garage.
Cold.
Dangerous. Familiar. Take your hands off her. The 3 men froze. Emma froze. Everyone turned. A black luxury SUV stood near the entrance. Several doors opened simultaneously. Armed men stepped out. And at the center of them all, Vittorio Romano. The expression on his face terrified even his own bodyguards. Because he wasn't angry. He was beyond angry. He was furious. One kidnapper swallowed nervously. You should leave. Vittorio took another step forward. The garage suddenly felt much smaller. That wasn't a request. The men released Emma immediately. She stumbled backward. One of Vittorio's guards caught her before she fell. The kidnappers exchanged nervous glances. They finally realized who stood before them. And realization quickly became fear. Pure fear. Vittorio slowly adjusted his suit jacket. Then he spoke words none of them would ever forget. Do you know what happens? Another step forward. To people who touch something that belongs to me? Emma's eyes widened. The kidnappers looked terrified. Nobody answered. Vittorio's voice became deadly quiet. I'll show you. And for the first time, the monsters realized they had chosen the wrong woman. The parking garage fell silent. Not a single person moved. Not a single person breathed comfortably. Because everyone standing there knew one thing. Vittorio Romano was not a man who made empty threats. The 3 kidnappers stared at him with fear in their eyes. Moments earlier they had felt powerful. Now they looked like terrified children. Emma stood behind one of Vittorio's bodyguards. Her hands trembled. Her heartbeat refused to slow down. Everything had happened so quickly. One moment she was walking to her car. The next she was nearly kidnapped. And somehow Vittorio appeared exactly when she needed him. The timing felt impossible. Almost as if he had known. Vittorio slowly approached the kidnappers. His expensive shoes echoed against the concrete floor. Each step increased their panic. One of the men finally spoke. We were paid. Vittorio stopped. His eyes narrowed. By who? The man hesitated. That was a mistake. A very dangerous mistake. Vittorio tilted his head slightly. The movement alone made the man nervous. By who? The question came again. Colder this time. The kidnapper swallowed hard. Richard Hayes. Emma's eyes widened. She couldn't believe it. Richard actually tried to kidnap her. simply because she embarrassed him. The realization made her stomach turn. Vittorio wasn't surprised. He already suspected it. Marco had warned him days earlier. Still, hearing confirmation changed everything. Because suspicion and proof were not the same thing. Now he had proof. Vittorio looked toward Marco.
Take them.
The three kidnappers immediately panicked. Wait, we told you everything. Please. Nobody listened. Within seconds the men were dragged away. Their screams echoed through the garage, then disappeared. Emma didn't ask where they were being taken. Something told her she didn't want to know. When silence returned, Vittorio finally looked at her. The coldness disappeared instantly. Are you hurt? Emma shook her head.
No.
Are you sure? Yes. Only then did he relax slightly. For the first time since arriving. You shouldn't be alone. Emma blinked.
What?
Richard Hayes is desperate. His voice remained calm. He already crossed one line. Emma suddenly understood. He'll try again. Vittorio nodded. Yes. Fear returned immediately. Because she knew he was right. Richard had money, influence, connections, and apparently no conscience. The thought was terrifying. Vittorio looked toward one of his security officers. Bring the car. The man immediately obeyed. Emma stared. What are you doing? Protecting you. The answer came so naturally it caught her off guard. I don't need protection. Vittorio raised an eyebrow. 3 men just tried kidnapping you. Emma opened her mouth, then closed it again. He had a point. A very good point. 10 minutes later, she found herself sitting inside a luxury armored SUV. The most expensive vehicle she had ever entered. The interior looked more like a private jet than a car. Everything felt surreal. Vittorio sat across from her, silent, watching the city pass outside. Emma finally gathered enough courage to ask the question bothering her.
Why?
He looked at her. Why what? Why are you helping me? The question lingered between them. For a moment Vittorio remained silent. Then he surprised her. 6 months ago. Emma frowned. What happened 6 months ago? You saved a boy. Her eyes widened. The subway accident? Vittorio nodded. Emma immediately remembered. The teenager, the ambulance, the crowd, the rain, everything. What does that have to do with this? Vittorio's expression softened. He was my nephew. Emma froze. What? My nephew. The realization hit her instantly.
The boy.
Matteo, the same teenager she had helped. He was related to Vittorio. Everything suddenly made sense. How he knew her name. How he recognized her. How he seemed familiar with her life. Emma stared. You knew who I was? Yes. For how long? Months. The answer shocked her. Months. Vittorio Romano had known about her for months. And she never realized. Emma leaned back against the seat, trying to process everything. Finally, she asked softly, You were watching me? A faint smile appeared. That sounds worse than it was. Despite herself, Emma laughed.
For the first time since the attack.
The sound surprised both of them. Vittorio smiled slightly. And Emma noticed something. When he smiled, he looked completely different. Less dangerous. Less intimidating. Almost human. The discovery was strangely comforting. Meanwhile, across the city, Richard Hayes was losing control. His office looked like a battlefield. Broken glass covered the floor. Several expensive decorations had been destroyed. Richard paced furiously, his face red with rage. His kidnapping attempt failed. His men disappeared. And worst of all, Vittorio Romano now knew he was responsible. Richard understood what that meant. He wasn't dealing with lawyers anymore. He wasn't dealing with bad publicity. He wasn't dealing with business rivals. He was dealing with Vittorio, a man whose enemies rarely survived. Fear slowly replaced anger. For the first time since the gala, Richard considered running, leaving New York, disappearing, starting over somewhere else. Unfortunately, he waited too long. A knock echoed through his office. Richard looked up, confused. It's after midnight. The knock came again, 3 times. Slow, deliberate. His stomach tightened. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. The office door opened. And Marco Romano walked inside. Alone. Richard immediately turned pale. Because Marco never arrived alone. If Marco was here, it meant Vittorio was close. Very close. Marco smiled. A terrifying smile. Mr. Hayes. Richard couldn't speak. Fear gripped his throat. Marco casually adjusted his tie. The boss would like a word. Richard's legs nearly gave out. Because everyone in New York knew exactly what that sentence meant. The boss would like a word. And those words almost never ended well. At the same time, Emma arrived at Romano Tower, the tallest private building in Manhattan. Security surrounded every entrance. Guards stood everywhere. The place felt more secure than a government facility. She looked upward. The tower seemed endless. You're serious about protection. Vittorio glanced at her. I am. You expect me to stay here? Yes. Emma laughed nervously. You barely know me. Vittorio looked directly into her eyes and answered honestly. I know enough. Something about the way he said it made her heart skip a beat. For the first time, Emma realized this wasn't simply gratitude. This wasn't only about the boy she saved. There was something else. Something deeper. Something neither of them had admitted yet. But before either could say another word, Marco called. Vittorio answered immediately. His expression darkened. Emma noticed. What happened? Vittorio slowly lowered the phone. His eyes became ice cold. The same eyes she had seen in the parking garage. The problem has been located. Emma didn't understand. But somewhere across New York, Richard Hayes had just learned that some mistakes could never be fixed. And Vittorio Romano was about to remind everyone exactly why people feared his name. The city of New York never truly slept. Even after midnight, lights filled the skyline. Traffic flowed through crowded streets. People chased money, power, and success. Yet on the top floor of Romano Tower, none of those things mattered tonight. Only one thing mattered. Justice. Vittorio Romano stood beside the massive glass window overlooking Manhattan. His expression was unreadable. Cold. Controlled. Dangerous. The same expression that had terrified enemies for more than a decade. Behind him stood Marco. Several trusted men waited silently. Nobody dared speak first, because everyone understood what was about to happen. Richard Hayes had crossed a line. Not a business line.
Not a social line.
A personal line. And in Vittorio's world, personal mistakes carried the highest price. Marco finally broke the silence. He's downstairs. Vittorio nodded slowly. Bring him. Within moments, 2 guards entered. Between them walked Richard Hayes. Or, at least what remained of the arrogant billionaire. Gone was the confidence. Gone was the smug smile. Gone was the belief that money could solve everything. Now there was only fear. Pure fear. Richard's expensive suit was wrinkled. His face looked pale. His hands shook uncontrollably. The moment he saw Vittorio, his knees nearly gave out. Please. Vittorio remained silent. The silence frightened Richard more than shouting ever could. I made a mistake. Still silence. Richard swallowed hard. I'll apologize. Nothing. I'll pay. Nothing. The billionaire's panic increased. Because he finally understood something. This situation was beyond money. Far beyond money. Vittorio slowly turned around. Their eyes met. Richard immediately looked away, unable to hold his gaze. You paid men to kidnap an innocent woman.
His voice was calm.
Far too calm. Richard nodded rapidly. I'm sorry. Vittorio took a step forward. Sorry? Another step. That's the word you chose? Richard couldn't answer. Because there was no answer. No excuse. No explanation. Nothing could justify what he had done. Vittorio stopped directly in front of him. Do you know why people follow me, Richard? The billionaire shook his head.
No.
Because they know exactly where they stand. The room remained silent. I protect people who deserve protection. Another pause. And I destroy people who hurt them. Richard's breathing became shallow. Because for the first time, he believed every word. Vittorio nodded toward Marco. Show him. Marco handed several documents to Richard. The billionaire looked confused. Then he started reading. His face turned white. Every bank account, every hidden investment, every secret transaction, everything. Vittorio had found it all. Years of illegal financial activities, tax fraud,
Bribery.
corporate crimes. Enough evidence to destroy him completely. Richard stared.
How?
Vittorio smiled slightly. A terrifying smile. Because while you were spending your life hurting people, he leaned closer. I was building an empire. The room became silent again. Richard finally understood. The battle had ended before it even started. There would be no escape, no comeback, no second chance. His empire was finished. Completely. Vittorio nodded toward the guards. Take him away. Richard panicked. Wait. Nobody moved. Please. No response. Tears appeared in his eyes. Actual tears. The same man who laughed at Emma. The same man who mocked her. The same man who tried kidnapping her. Now begging. Exactly like his victims once begged him. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The guards dragged him away. His desperate voice echoed through the room. Then disappeared. Forever. The moment the doors closed, silence returned. Marco looked at Vittorio. It's done. Vittorio nodded. But surprisingly, he didn't feel satisfaction. He didn't feel victory. He only felt relief. Because this was never about revenge. It was about protecting someone who deserved better. And for the first time in years, someone mattered more to him than business. More than power. More than fear. Emma Carter. Meanwhile, Emma stood alone on the rooftop garden of Romano Tower. The night air felt cool against her skin. The city sparkled below. Beautiful. Endless. Peaceful. For the past few days, her entire life had changed. People treated her differently. News channels discussed her. Social media couldn't stop talking about her. And somehow, the most powerful man in New York kept appearing beside her. The entire situation felt impossible. A month ago, she was invisible. Now, everyone knew her name. But something bothered her. A question she couldn't stop asking herself.
Why?
Why her? Why would a man like Vittorio care? She stared at the skyline, lost in thought. Then she heard footsteps. She didn't need to turn around. She already knew who it was. Vittorio stopped beside her. For several moments, neither spoke. The silence felt comfortable, natural, which surprised both of them. Finally, Emma smiled. Everything okay? Vittorio nodded. Yes. Richard, it's over. Emma looked at him carefully. She saw something different tonight. The hardness was still there. The power. The danger. But beneath it, something softer. Something human. She took a deep breath. Then asked the question. Why me? Vittorio looked at her. What? Why did you choose me? The question lingered between them. For the first time, since meeting her, Vittorio seemed unsure. Almost nervous. A rare sight. Emma waited patiently. Eventually, he spoke. When I first investigated you. She raised an eyebrow. You investigated me? A little. Emma laughed. A little? Maybe more than a little. She couldn't help smiling. Vittorio continued. I expected to find someone ordinary. The city lights reflected in his eyes. Instead, I found someone extraordinary. Emma looked away. Embarrassed. I'm not extraordinary. Yes, you are. The answer came immediately. Without hesitation. Without doubt. Vittorio stepped closer. Most people become cruel after the world hurts them. His voice softened. You didn't. Emma remained silent.
Listening.
You stayed kind. Another step. You stayed good. Their eyes met. And that's rarer than beauty. For a moment, neither moved. Neither spoke. The city seemed to disappear around them. There was only the two of them. Emma felt her heart racing. Vittorio felt something he hadn't experienced in years.
Hope.
Then he smiled slightly. The truth is, Emma waited. Vittorio took a deep breath. The feared Mafia boss. The man who intimidated senators. The man who controlled empires. Actually looked nervous. The truth is, his eyes never left hers. I didn't choose you that night. Emma blinked.
What?
I chose you months ago. Silence. Then realization. Everything suddenly made sense. The ballroom, the protection, the bracelet, the attention, all of it. Vittorio smiled. I was simply too stubborn to admit it. For several seconds, Emma stared at him. Then she laughed. A genuine laugh.
Warm.
Beautiful. The kind of laugh that made Vittorio forget every problem in the world. And before she could stop herself, she stepped closer, then wrapped her arms around him. The powerful Mafia boss froze.
Completely.
His bodyguards would never believe it. The man feared by thousands had no idea what to do. Emma smiled against his chest. You know. Vittorio looked down. What? You can be very dramatic. For the first time in years, Vittorio Romano laughed. A real laugh. And in that moment he realized something important. Power couldn't buy happiness. Money couldn't buy peace. Fear couldn't buy love. But somehow, the woman everyone mocked had given him all three. As the city lights shined around them, Vittorio wrapped an arm around Emma. And for the first time in his life, the cold Mafia boss finally felt warm.